Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So today, I want to have a look at the ongoing Ukrainian offensive. I want to have a look at just what the Ukrainians have captured since June. It has been a dreadful period of time for the Ukrainian military. June, July, August, now we're into September. We are now 90 days, well over 90 days of perpetual offensive operations by the Ukrainians. Remember, the initial offensive operation by the Ukrainians believed that the Russian defensive lines in the Zaporizhzhia sector, this sector here, was going to collapse rather quickly, meaning that the Ukrainians believed that within a few short weeks they would have seized Tokmak and within a month have rolled into Melitopol and then proceeded to cut off Russian forces, the land corridor from Russia proper to Russia proper, which is the Crimean Peninsula. Now, that has not happened, and we continue to hear about these small villages that are signs of victory. Now, let's first have a look at the size and scope of Bakhmut, because we're going to compare the Russian seizure of Bakhmut, a relatively larger town. I don't want to call it a city, but again, a larger town, when we compare and contrast the current tactical victories in these small villages that the Ukrainians are claiming to have captured. So let's go over to the Rondelli Foundation map. And this is Bakhmut, a moderately sized town. You have large Soviet-era apartment blocks. You have industry. You have suburban areas, single-family homes, government installations. It is a larger town with a railway network that runs through the center of the city. And this town obviously was captured by Russian forces. A very large fortified town that the Ukrainians expended massive amounts of personnel to try and unsuccessfully to defend. Now, if we go to the southern Zaporizhzhia sector and we have a look at just what the Ukrainians are accomplishing in terms of seizing control of towns and terrain, it is incredibly finite. And Robatna, this is the largest town that the Ukrainians can stake claim to in terms of a tactical victory in which they seized control of a town. So again, compare and contrast. An incredibly small 4 streets, couple dozen houses, no infrastructure, compared to Bakhmut. Again, Robatna. And then we'll go back up to Bakhmut. Much bigger, obviously. Now, south of Bakhmut, again, the Ukrainians are claiming victory. They are saying they are taking terrain, taking control of towns. Klishivka. This is now disputed. Again, compare and contrast the size. Incredibly small. And we have to say, essentially, these small hamlets or villages no longer exist. They have been flattened. So essentially, what you're really looking at is the taking of, what is this? That is what the Ukrainians have taken, if they have taken Klishivka. So again, the reason I'm talking about this is because it is a false narrative. When the Ukrainians take these very small villages, they're reported it as if the Ukrainians have taken Bakhmut. In the West, the low IQ information person in the West, when they hear about there has been Ukrainian success in Klishivka, there has been Ukrainian success in Andriivka, they associate these victories the same as the Russian victory for Bakhmut. So here is Andriivka, 1, 2, 3 streets, and we can quite literally count the houses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You get the point, right? Now let's go and try to count the houses in apartment blocks in Bakhmut. You can't do it. Okay, so you cannot associate what the Ukrainians are accomplishing in terms of the Russian victory for the fortified town of Bakhmut. Completely different. I think Bakhmut, in fact, was larger than Tokmak. Let's have a look at Tokmak real quick. And yeah, of course. So that's the goal for the Ukrainians. Is it an achievable goal? Are the Ukrainians going to drive to and seize control of Tokmak? At this point, I don't believe it's possible for the Ukrainian forces. I think it's just too much. And the Ukrainians are not going to capture Tokmak. This may be what we're seeing right now in terms of the salient that the Ukrainians have created south of Orkiv. This may be the extent of the Ukrainian offensive. Again, 3 months of war, 3 months of offensive operations, the infusion of massive amounts of equipment. Leopard 2 main battle tanks, Challenger 2 main battle tanks, Strykers, Bradleys, Storm Shadows, HIMARS. The full inventory outside of F-16s and ATACMs have been deployed against Russian forces. $100 billion plus of military aid and treasure has been infused into the Ukrainian economy for this offensive operation that, again, was supposed to achieve a breakthrough and rapid success after about 30 days. That's what we are hearing was the time frame that the Ukrainians and certain, well, let me back up. Certain elements of the Ukrainian military and certain elements of Western North Atlantic Treaty Organization, U.S. political leadership believe would happen. The general collapse of the Russian front line. It did not happen. The worst case scenario occurred. Beyond the worst case scenario, I think at this point, the worst case scenario for the Ukrainians, for certain elements in the Democrat-controlled leadership at the White House, was that the worst case scenario was that Tokmak would be the only city to fall, and then eventually a follow-on offensive towards Melitopol. Didn't happen. Not even close to Tokmak yet. It failed. The Ukrainian offensive failed. Massive casualties. In the West, General Milley is not able to come out and say it. They're being dishonest with you. The media is being dishonest with you. So now what is Plan B? What is plan C? Well, we don't know yet. We don't know. Now, is that going to be the deployment of F-16s? Is it going to be further escalations with ATACMS after this upcoming White House visit by Zelensky? Who's to say? But again, given the fact that the Ukrainians have similar systems to the ATACMS, similar systems have been handed over to the Ukrainians. While they're not specifically ATACMS of U.S. manufacture, the Ukrainians have a similar capability. So again, if you infuse that similar capability to an existing capability, meaning long-distance engagements by Ukrainian precision-guided rockets, it's not going to change the status quo on the battlefield. It's going to kill more Russians, and the Russians are going to then kill more Ukrainians with deep penetration strikes into Ukraine, as we're seeing now. But ultimately, is it going to change what is happening on the ground? Probably not. Are the F-16s, if deployed to Ukraine, are they going to change the dynamics of what is happening on the ground? Probably not. And I think we're seeing the stage being set right now with the Ukrainians coming out and saying, hey, our pilots are 3 months ahead of where they need to be in terms of learning and operating the F-16. Maybe so. But again, what is the F-16 going to do? Is it going to fly into the Russian Federation and try to engage Bear bombers launching cruise missiles? Those F-16s will be shot down at dozens of miles from the Ukrainian border, the Ukrainian-Russian border. So again, they'll just be used as localized air defense, maybe in the western Ukraine, and then possibly the deployment of cruise missiles and other systems, precision-guided weapon systems against Russian ground targets. But ultimately, if a few F-16s, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to change what is happening on the battlefield right now. And again, we're seeing the Russian defense budget continue to expand. We think at this point the Russian economy and the Russian military can conservatively continue to fight for another 3 years of high-tempo operations. At least another 3 years. And I think at this point, that's what the Russians are preparing for. Continue to build up forces to see what the Russian military looks like in another 6 months, maybe a year. And then the Russians will reassess renewed offensive operations against the Ukrainians. But again, status quo, and then the biggest concern, I think, for the Ukrainians and myself as well, is the turmoil of the upcoming elections. I am incredibly concerned about what is going to happen to the United States in the upcoming elections. I am incredibly concerned that the Democratic Party, the party of Joe Biden, has decided to become a unitary one-party state. And the reason I say that again is the use of the United States criminal justice system, the Department of Justice, and local far left-wing operatives at the state level using police force against political opponents. And I also have concerns about the validity of the elections as well. And then what is going to then happen on the street? I think the United States is slowly walking towards civil conflict. And again, I think that's going to occur during the election cycle, and I think this upcoming election cycle could be incredibly disconcerting for many people. And I think it's going to affect the United States in many different ways that the low IQ voter in the United States has no idea of what's coming and just how bad it's going to get. They don't understand it. They're oblivious. So that's where I'm going to leave it off for today. We will continue to watch what is happening on the ground. We will continue to report. Thank you for joining us. We will be doing another video on the civil war in the former state of Ethiopia. It appears that Amharan militia groups have gained an advantage on the ground, at least in the Amhara region. And I will do an update very soon on that ongoing war. As always, have a good day. See you soon.